2 minutes to go, and I'll preface with any questions posted to the chat. Please reference the request number. You'll see once we get started, there'll be numbers in front of all the API requests. So just reference the number, and I'll try to answer your questions live. Okay, so there is definitely a delay in the stream, so please forgive slightly late responses, but we're almost there, the top of the hour. Okay, let's just get this stuff ready. Okay. All right, we got a few people on. Great. And we are almost there, so let me flip over to desktop. Let's bring this up. And it's probably like a 16-second delay. So, okay. So welcome to the Casual Friday on Friday the 13th. Today I'll be doing the SEP 14 Management REST API demonstration. Hopefully I'll have some participants ask questions. My name is Zefran Ortiz. I'm a independent consultant at my own company called Here You Co. And I'm going to delve into the SEP REST API single request at a time and review each one. But before we do that, I want to show the tool that I'm using. I'm not endorsing it because I have a financial interest or anything. I just really like the tool, and it was free to use for my purposes. So instead of using a text editor to write my REST API calls, I wanted a tool that allowed me to copy paste very easily, and it'll help me check my errors while I typed along, and would allow me to share it with someone who's new to REST API development. And that was the key, being able to be used by pretty much anyone. So I'll start by going over the agenda, and let me switch over to agenda. And I'm going to do the quick intro to Postman. I'll cover probably the most important API call for SEP 14, which is the authentication request. I found a lot of people who've asked me questions in the past couldn't even get past the first hurdle, which was getting the token to be able to make requests. Then I'll go over how to deal with groups, get endpoint statistics, endpoint inventory, then statistics, how to quarantine an endpoint, and then how to actually extract the Postman code, write some Python with the authentication in it. Yeah, let's get started. Let's jump over to the desktop. All right, and so on the top left-hand side of Postman, you'll have collections, and basically it's just what it sounds like, a collection of your requests. Here you can right-click or hit the three dots and say Add Request. You can add folders to organize your requests and so on, so that you can export these to share them with your friends, colleagues, and by just right-clicking Export, and the export itself is JSON. Very easy to manipulate as well. Instead of using hard-coded strings in your requests, Postman allows you to use what are called environments. So let's go over to the right-hand side. Let's see if this works. Yep. And on the right-hand side, you'll see this SEP 14 drop-down. So this is where you select which environment you want to work on. And then if we move over here, you can actually see the SEP 14 environment in Postman, and it has all my variables with their values. These I'm going to reference in the requests. Now, if anybody has questions, I'll pop them in the chat window. Okay, so I went to the API docs site at Symantec, or Broadcom now, and let me bring up that link. Okay, so this is what where the API stuff is located. So if we go to, let's hover that over here. Yeah, So the API docs.symantec.com/home/SAEP, which I'll add as a text and in the closed captioning later. Uh, this is where you can actually look up the queries, the requests to put inside of your Postman. But I had to kind of decipher this information and turn it into Postman calls. And if I move over to the left hand side here under dynamic value setting, I click on obtain authentication token, and this URL I got from that API docs website. And I had to kind of decipher it a little bit to find out what the structure of the body was, and that it was JSON and all that. So here you have, let me actually go to the center, and there we go. So we can go to the center there. Body, and you can see the format you need to use to query properly. So you have to pass a username, password, and domain if you have one. If not, if you only have one, you can leave it blank. And now these are special. These little curly brackets actually are telling Postman to go look that SEP API underscore user under here, under the Postman environment. So there's a SEP API underscore user in the environment set to SEP API 2 and the password. Now, if I hit send, so if I go up to the right hand side, you would actually hit send, and then you get this response at the bottom. So if you're going to hover over to the bottom, and what we're looking for is this number. This is the token that we're going to have to use in all subsequent requests. All authorizations, all requests require this authorization token. But I don't want to copy paste this into all my headers for all my requests. So another feature of Postman, pretty cool, is this tests tab. And this is JavaScript. And what I'm doing is when I received this response body back from the SEP14 manager, which is this, let's go up, yep, which is this guy right here, I parsed it, turned it into a JSON object, and then I'm able to actually set in my Postman environment auth underscore token, and by having this format, parse data dot token, it grabs this piece of information here and puts it in the Postman environment. So now I can use that everywhere else. Okay, so let's actually move on to a request that doesn't require username and password, but actually uses the authentication token. So let's go search for a group. So we're going to search a list of groups and set a test group ID. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and run that. So we'll go over to the right, just hit send. Okay, and we end up with this response, which is basically the entire collection of groups in your set manager. So you'll see every group has an ID, it's got a full path, and it's got a name and so on. But I wanted to capture one specific group's ID. Again, I took advantage of that tests tab, and I'm doing a search for a specific group called test group. And I set this value, and then when I receive that response body, I loop through it until I find it, and then I set the group IDs. That this is a great way to search through hundreds and hundreds, or I'm trying to have thousands hopefully, but hundreds of groups, and set them in your Postman environment for use in other queries and other SEP14 REST API calls. Okay, so now I have this group ID set in my Postman environment. All right, and next we can set the values. This is a very specific use case where you have a machine who is your kind of model machine. Maybe you have a quarantine group or a restricted group, and that machine has the group IDs and all kinds of other information that you want to capture so you can leverage it elsewhere. Like group ID, maybe like a hardware key, computer ID. I'm setting all these values based on the information from this one computer. So let me go ahead and run it and scroll down, zoom down a little bit. There we go. And I've captured the response body from one machine, and this one machine gives me quite a bit of information actually. Now, let's see what kind of information would be good for you guys. Total disk space, free disk space, whether it's online or not, what protection technologies are running, on this particular endpoint. Here's a good one: worst infection IDX 0. That tells me that this machine has had at least a virus. And when was it? Right, that's the last virus time, last time the virus was found. And so you could leverage this if you wanted to have your source system or a SIM collecting information. So just some of the values you can get out of here. Here's the firewall on or off. Oh, I got a question in the chat. Yes, the collection. I'll put it on my GitHub account. I'll put the link at the end of the video once I upload the video, because I'm gonna add closed captions to it and have it available by Monday. Cool. And then one really useful piece of information here is the free disk space. I found that some people have encountered machines that are not updating, and it's because their hard drives are almost full. So there's a lot of information to go over here. I won't go over anymore because we have to get through a lot of other content. So let's move on to groups. So this has been a frequent request, people wanting to get the groups, either create groups, move groups, delete groups in a more automated fashion, because traditionally you had to go through the console or write some pretty funky scripts. So now you have the ability to query the groups. There's all your groups. Let me zoom out, actually. There we go. So you can query the groups with that command, and grab the IDs for the groups you want to delete, know when they were created, who created it, and so on. So that's pretty simple. That's pretty simple command. Oh, I forgot to mention the header thing. So you see that we don't have a username and password, and we don't have a body because we're using that auth token. My apologies. Here's the header called authorization, and you need to have the word bearer. Don't forget the space right there. A lot of people forget that little space, and then the auth token, and that's what allows us to make these requests without the username and password anymore. And this information, remember, we collected it and put it in the Postman environment. It's those curly brackets are telling Postman, go fetch it from the Postman environment over here on the top right hand side. Okay, now let's create a group. So in order to create a group, you have to tell it which group is the parent group, right? So we'll go to body, and this is a post. So it's an HTTP post. We're going to post some data, and that data is going to include a name of a group, that this is the new group, and whether or not it's going to inherit policies, stay inheriting policies from that parent group, or in this case, whatever this group is. So you would actually have to run list of groups first. Let's go. You can go fetch one. Let's say you wanted a new group under South America, maybe, or say you wanted to put here you go, a Tokyo under Japan. So you would have to grab this value and place it in your Postman environment so that it would be referenced here. And whatever name you specify here will then be created under Japan, and that would be in this case Tokyo, for example. So I'm gonna go ahead and run this. So over here, hit send, and we get a very simple 201 status. We don't have any response body down here, so nothing really to see down here. But on the right hand side, we get a 201 created. So yeah, the group was created. And if we want to double check, let's look at the client group. What the heck is it? Let's zoom in over here. And we have something called client group. It's called test_group. And so if we run the list of groups again, we can do a search for test group, and there it is. So we have a test_group now created. All right, so next query. Another thing that people want to do is delete groups. So we need that group's ID. So we created that group. The set14 manager dynamically assigned it an ID upon creation, and we need to know that in order to delete it. So we would retrieve that information. You would have to create a query like the list of groups, query for the group, collect its ID, and then specify it here. Okay. So if we go to list of groups, actually, I did create a query for this. So this is going to return all the groups, and then take that test_group, search it, and then assign it to group IDs. That's all this is doing. And done. Okay, so now that I have the ID for that particular group, I can delete it. So I'm going to go ahead and delete it. If we zoom up to the top, you can see the command for deleting. And if I hit send, zoom over to the right hand side, we hit send. We get a 204 no content, which is not very descriptive, but let's see if we run a list of groups. Is test underscore group still there? Let's search. We'll do a control F and do test, and test group is gone. So as you can see, the REST API, the SEP14 REST API does give you the ability to delete, and then all you'd have to do is create a nice loop with all the groups you wanted to delete, and you can automate it. Another good use case is if you wanted to move a lot of machines from one set of groups to another set of groups, this is the command to do that. So let's zoom into the top, and looking at the API docs on .symantec.com site, I found the words, but not exactly. I couldn't initially decipher them. So here they are deciphered for you after some trial and error. So you put the group ID of the group that you want to move into. So you're making a patch, HTTP patch, calling the computers API call, and then you're specifying the target group. In this case, I believe it's restricted group. Let me see, I forgot what I called it. So I'm just going to look through here real quick. Target underscore group IDS is... I don't remember. Oh, I think it is restricted group. Let's see. So hardware key was collected all the way in the beginning when I set the values for Vault 13. So this is the target, where the group of the machine is going to go, and this is the machine. So let's go ahead and hit send. And if we kind of zoom down, we'll see that we got a different message back. Respond code 200, response message OK. So that means the group is now, the computer is now in the new group. So there you have it. That's how to move a machine to a new group. All right, so let me see what my list of things to do next. All right, let's go over to this one. This is a very popular one too. And let me clean up the top so there's not so much stuff up here. Any questions? No more questions. Okay. All right. So we'll go to get the list of all the computers. So I showed you how to get all the groups. Now you can learn how to extract all the computers, and this is very simple call. Again, you just need the authentication token, and these are all the machines in the environment. If you have the ID for the computer, you can delete it by doing an HTTP delete. Okay, and so that's too simple. So that's a good thing that it's simple. And then if you want to get information on just one computer, say you have thousands of machines, you don't want to retrieve everything just to get information on one computer, you can just put a question mark, computer name with capital N equals, and then the computer name. In this case, I'm using Vault 13. And I'm going to hit send. And I did get the response for Vault 13. And there you have it. There's the machine, the logged on administrator. It's in VirtualBox, and so on and so forth. Okay. And let's go ahead and skip forward to the manager. No, we're gonna skip that one. Okay, here we go. So this is event information. There's I've gotten questions from folks about how to extract the logs through the REST API. Unfortunately, the raw logs are not available. So you can't get the one event, but you can get summary information. So here's get a list of all the critical events. Of course, my environment doesn't have any, but if you did, they would be listed here. Here's a count of infected clients. Okay, and you see the format's JSON, so it's wonderful if you have a visualization system and you wanted to have a little graph, a little chart of the infections by day, and you can specify here by the report type either day, week, month, or hour, and all you'd have to do is change the report type to any of those words, and you can run all these different types of reports. And that goes for clients with detected malware, also with the report type, old time, timestamp, and auto resolved. Again, I don't have any bad stuff in my environment, but you could, run that and get that for your visualizations. Um, this one's a very neat call. Again, this is one of those, a lot of people have asked for it, but right now you have to go through the console unless you use the REST API. And so here, you make this call to stats, client risk, and then your start time and now time, and it'll give you the risk count by the different protection technologies on your SEP 14 agent. So SEP 14 is not just antivirus. It's not, it also has a firewall. It also has an intrusion prevention, sonar, downloading. So it has all this stuff. So which technology is detecting the risk? So it's pretty neat. So you can know, this could help you justify getting new technologies implemented in the environment. If you run some tests, some like case controls, and have a few machines with IPS, and then show management that you're detecting quite a lot with IPS, but the other 80% of the machines don't have it. So maybe we should install that component. Threat stats. This is the current threat stats. I don't have any. No infected clients. So that's good. But in most environments, you'll probably get a few infected clients in there, right? All right. Next, keep an eye on the chat. This is another one that comes up a lot. Where are endpoints? Which virus definition set is deployed in the environment, and how many machines have it? So since I turned on Vault 13 this morning, it was the last one that needed to be updated. So now all 6 of my machines are on the latest version. But how do I know that's the latest version? Because you can actually query with this one, AV-Def latest, for what Symantec is publishing as the latest. So this would actually be the first step. Say you wanted to check how many of your machines are on X, Y, and Z versions, and how many of them are on the latest. You would make this query first, capture this piece of information here, and then do this query and count and get the counts. This probably make a good pie chart. Now, where are your clients downloading their virus definitions or their content from? So are you sure they're getting their content from the SEP manager, or are they getting it from their group update providers, or are they getting it from the internet via live update? Well, this call will show you where your clients are getting their content from. And so you see here, 1 machine got it from live update and 5 from the SEP manager. So this is a great use of the LAN bandwidth versus using the internet connection bandwidth for live update. Granted, this might be someone who was disconnected from the corporate network, and they got their updates via their Wi-Fi at Starbucks or whatever. Okay. Another interesting query that would help in justifying upgrades is this client version request. So some folks out there are still running really old versions of SEP, and you don't want to do that, right? You want to be at the closest to latest as possible, hopefully the latest, so you avoid having vulnerable systems, because software is software. It's going to have vulnerabilities eventually, and running vulnerable versions of Symantec Endpoint Protection 14 probably is not a good idea. So here you would actually have all the different versions listed and the count. So if any of these come up 12 dot something, then you really need to upgrade. And you can easily go to the Broadcom site and get the list of vulnerabilities for those older versions to justify getting to the latest. Okay, by the way, in the chat room, if I'm going too slow or too fast, let me know. I'll slow down or speed up. So online status count. So this is kind of a interesting query. It's kind of good and bad because the online looks like it's telling you that 5 machines are currently online, but it's kind of misleading a little bit. So online is kind of determined by the heartbeat. So if you have an environment that has a 2-hour heartbeat, then that machine that heartbeated, say at 12 o'clock, and it disconnects, the person turns off the machine, it's still counted as online. So for at least 2 heartbeats. At least that's what my understanding. You can test that out yourself too. But so yeah, it's a little useful in that this request can be useful in that situation where you need to get a update out. You have to get a policy change out, and someone in management asks what percentage of our systems are able to be kind of updated now. And if you have 99 machines here and 1 here, then you have conceivably a 99% of the population ready to be updated. Again, with a little wiggle room for the online machines that are not really online, but close enough. All right, let me clean up the interface a little bit so that I can get to the next request. Okay, so where was I? Already did those. Okay, so for this one, I think I should actually log in to the client. Yeah, so I'll just bring that bad boy over here. I don't want to cover the whole screen. But basically what I'm going to do here, this does require a bunch of prep on the SEP manager because you have to have the right policies assigned to a group in order to be able to quarantine the endpoint. But if you have the prerequisites set up on the manager, then you should be able to do this. So this is the quarantine command. This is the quarantine command for 1 machine. And I'm going to go ahead and send that. And over here, here we go. So this machine is Vault 13. Actually, can you see it? No. Let me move over. There we go. So here's Vault 13. And as soon as it gets this quarantine, it's going to shut down my RDP because by putting it into quarantine, it changes the firewall rules, which will then shut down all these connections. And I will no longer be able... Oh, there it is. So the quarantine took effect, and I'm no longer able to connect from this computer. All right, so Vault 13 is in quarantine. What do we do? Let's unquarantine it. Go to unquarantine, which is basically the same command except undo equal true, and I'm gonna send it. Now I got a status 200 OK, and let me move over here. You see, you get this response body command ID underscore computer. So you really need to record this value because we can use that value to query whether or not that command was successful. So I actually used the test tab to grab that. So you see here, I did the same thing as before, get the response body, grab the command ID, put it in command ID, and now I'm going to use this command, the command queue command with a command ID. And I'm going to send it, and I'm going to see, okay, so now I see that the command obviously exists because I got this response, but the endpoint has not checked in yet. So you have a begin time null, last update time null. So we can basically refresh this. So if you're using, oh, there we go. Okay, that was pretty fast. So the Vault 13 machine checked in and dequarantined itself, and I know that from this value. So the state ID 3 means that it's no longer quarantined. It's free to roam, same as before. Okay. Admin related. So this is a curious request. So you make a request for admin. Actually, can I zoomed in right? Yep. So admin users, and you can see all the administrators on the SEP manager. This could be pretty useful if you wanted to kind of audit the system every few hours to see if any new administrators have been created. Are they locking out? Like right here, where is it? Failed login count, right here. The last login time, the last log on IP. So you can keep track of the administrators. This is the built-in administrator. and this is the administrator that I'm using for this REST API call, Postman collection. All right, so what if I just wanted information on one admin? Same request, but with this the admin's ID, which I can retrieve over here. So here's the ID for that one. Here's the ID for that one, and you can do a query for that. Ta-da! Okay, now I haven't found a command for deleting. I didn't see that anywhere in the API docs. I'm hoping that eventually that's put in there. Or if it's undocumented, hopefully if somebody's on this call that knows it, please chat it. But I did find that there are some values that can be updated on administrators. I could not find a way to update the password. Doesn't look like that's possible, but I could be wrong. But at least I verified that these things can be changed. So you can do that. But even though you can't delete an administrator, you can create one. So here we have the format to create the admin. So very quick, here's the list. Remember the list of admins, only 2. So we're gonna create one. This is gonna be called Protectron. Full name Mac Ination, and there's the password for it. And we're gonna go ahead and hit send. And if you scroll down a little bit, there you go. You can see that it worked. And if we run the list of admins, we have our 3 admins. We have Protectron, Machination, and their email address and everything. Okay? But unfortunately, you have to delete it through the admin console. Alright, this last one is a biggie. So it's going to probably take the most amount of time. So, actually, number 38. Let's start with 36. So this is to tell a client, update now. So this could be very useful if it's part of one of your SOAR processes to first update the content on machine, and then run a scan of some kind or whatever. So this would be the scan now, okay, on one client. Here's the scan for an entire group. So that Japan Tokyo group, if it had 100 machines in it, you can tell all 100 machines, update your content now. Okay, so now we go to one that's going to take a little while to explain. This is the evidence of compromise scan. It's kind of a bear to find the documentation for this thing, but it's actually in the a lot of it is in the SEP 12 second disk in the remote management API. I think it's called RMM. But you can find the EOC XML file, which basically describes this. Or you can just go ahead and use DuckDuckGo and do a search for SEP 14 evidence of compromise and XML, and you'll actually get this example that's online, so you don't have to go through all the RMM stuff. But in this scenario, it's kind of a weird request, but I'm using REST, embedding XML. That's going to say do a full scan on this computer and remediate it, meaning move it into quarantine, move whatever, if you find this thing, move it into quarantine. And what is the thing? This SHA-256 right here. So you can imagine using something like this to go and scan machines for a suspect threat or an unwanted piece of code and have it deleted. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and run this one. Okay, let me try a different one. I must have a typo somewhere in there. Let me try this one. Uh-oh, hold on. What did I do wrong here? Are any of these gonna work? That's what happens when we make changes at the last minute. Okay. Alright, so I got a typo in the other ones, but I'll use this one. This one's just a scan, and it's not going to remediate. I removed the remediate. If we go back to this one. Nope, sorry, that one. There's a remediate right here. So if we just run without the remediate, it'll just report back if it found it. And actually, let's do that. I'll run it. here's the command ID. I didn't use a test, so I'm going to grab it by hand. I forgot to put a test in for this one. And we'll go up to the right hand side. Let me move over there. And we'll put it under command ID by hand. Command ID. Oop. Oop. Okay, did I get it? Oh. What the heck? Well, it is Friday the 13th. Alright, cool. So we have that command ID. So if we go over to, let me move over this guy. If we go over to this status of, oh, I gotta zoom back out some more. If we go over to status of previously executed command and run it, we get this. You got the machine has not checked in yet, and so it is Vault 13. What I'm going to do is I'm going to force it to check in, so we can hurry up with this one. Granted, this one's going to do a full scan, so it's going to take a little longer. And if the machine, in real production environments, if the machine was not online, you'd have to wait for it to check in. And when it checked in, it would kind of check its mailbox. You know, checks, are there any commands for me? Yes. And it would retrieve this command to do the scan for that SHA-256 file. See if by any chance it checked in already. Nope. Okay, so then this is the kind of, I left it for last because it's the slowest part of the demonstration, but I think it's pretty powerful stuff. Let me move this window over here. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to force it to check in. This is just one of the ways to force it to check in. Alright, and let's see if we got a different response here. Not yet. Come on. And if this doesn't change in the next minute, actually 30 seconds, I'll bring up an example, which I saved on the top right hand side, because these could take a long time, because I think this one was a full scan. Yeah, it's going to take a while. So let's go ahead and use the example. So let's say we had a match. So this is an example of what gets returned when you have a successful remediation. You can actually, you have to search through this result in XML thing, this beast of a response. And here's the value for hacked notepad. The remediation was successful, and the hash. Now let's look at one that wasn't. So let's, there we go. So no match. And here's what a no match looks like. So let's see, matched result equals no match. So you'd have to write code to look for this value in there after having sent an evidence of compromise scan. And again, I did have some typo in here. I made some changes at the last minute, which probably shouldn't have done. But you would actually use this to tell it to remediate, or remove it and it'll just report back whether or not it found it. Alright, got 25 minutes left. Cool. Alright, so that was a file. You can also search for registry keys. So here I'm searching for just a quick scan, no remediation of any kind, just do these exist? Does the institute exist under HKey current user, or does BOSteal exist under HKey local machine, and it'll return a response of whether or not it was successful or not. It's kind of cool. Let's see, do I have a different example? No, that one's just Fallout. And I did not save an example. Let's see. Let's run the scan. Yeah, so I consistently made a edit on all of them. That was wrong. Actually, this gives me an opportunity to see if this other demonstration will help. So we'll do an import of an entire collection. So let's see if that'll help. Let's go to that guy. Bring that in as a copy. And this might be the version before I made the changes. So let's see. No, it's not. All right, so my apologies. I'll correct those and I'll kind of edit them in later then. All right, so I guess the last piece is the Python export. Um, so you've played with Postman. Oh, great, it's working in this environment, but I need to actually make it either a cron job or I need to put it in my source system that leverages Python. How do I do that? So this is one of the big reasons I love Postman. Um, I'm gonna show you the example that I've created, but actually, you know what? Before that, let me show you how to export. So you go, let's say you wanted to automate a little script to do the token grabbing. So go to this request, and then you go to this button right here. Let me zoom over to the right. Okay, and click on code. And on the left hand side, pick your language of choice, whatever you're in love with. I like Python, and I can now copy this code, and of course it actually changes the Postman variables to the actual strings, but you can modify that later. I'll show you that in the example. But you can copy this out like that. And now we have a working call. And by working call, I might actually run it. So let me open up, let me zoom out to the desktop. I'm going to do a command. And I am going to run Python. And I'm going to take that code, this one, copy it out of there, paste it into here. Oh, another thing that everybody comes across. So remember that SSL verification thing in Postman? Well, in Python, similar issue. You have to specify verify equals false to be able to do an HTTPS call on a self-signed certificate. So now that I have that, I can come in here, do that, and let me erase this one for a second. So you can see the lines, they're actually working. The response worked, but this is Python complaining that, yeah, you shouldn't do, use self-signed certificate, you shouldn't ignore it. So that's good advice, but I'm just testing here in a demo. So I want to copy this, paste it here, and we get this information. That's the response body, okay? So I can very easily do, token text equals, oh, I gotta put the JSON in there. Hold on a second. Import JSON, and then say output equals, oops, yeah. Output equals, this is JSON.loads, like that, yeah. Okay, so now I can do output, and it's nice JSON, and I can do that. Okay, so you can start developing your code, this code, to save it, and it'll output, you can have it output the token that you want. With that said, let me open up my example that's already written. So open, and we're going to do the get inventory. There we go. And what I basically did, I mean, it looks like a lot right now, but if you look carefully, I'm just taking the information from Postman and just changing the words a bit and adding some variables of my own in Python. Remember that call? SEP API v1 computers. So I'm setting this URL to this, no payload. I'm setting the authentication token there, and then here I'm making the request. So now inventory response is going to have the entire collection of machines. Okay. Once I do that, though, I have to transform that into an object that I can play with. And so I'm using the JSON loads to take that string, a bit giant long string, and turn it into a JSON object and then put it in here. Now I'm going to loop through it, and maybe I don't want all the information from the SEP14 manager. Maybe I just want the computer name, the computer group, and the ID. That's it. So I did a loop and just I printed this out just for the visuals, just to have something to see. And then I'm appending the values into this one basic collection, and then outputting it to a JSON file, and then let's see. Oh, so I'm outputting the subset and then the entire collection. So if we run this, let's drop down to command line. And we're going to do Python get inventory. Oh, sorry. Let me show the evidence. So I'm going to delete the JSON that's in here. Okay. Python get inventory. All right. So remember that print? So this is the print of the computer ID, group name. That's it. And if I do a dir again, I can see that there's now JSON files in here. One is example.json and one example underscore all JSON. So if I do that, there's a small collection and the big one. Now you could take this information now and start pumping it into whatever system you want to pump it into, because it's JSON. It's very easy to move the data around. But what I wanted to highlight in this particular Python is that I'm authenticating, grabbing the token, and making a call. So you could start, just stripping some of these pieces and creating your own scripts. Of course, you'd have to variabilize this one and this one for that initial authentication. Or you can import it, create a separate Python script that has that information, and then import it into here to just simplify it. But it helps so much to be able to use a tool that automatically exported those sample bits of code to get you started quickly. And again, because of this feature, the code feature in Postman, you could also export in Node.js, you can export in Java, and at least your Java guy, when they ask, or if you're the Java guy, how do I make this query? Or here's where you start. You don't have to start from scratch. Okay, we're getting close to the end, so I'll cover one crazy example of using Postman to transfer the data to Elasticsearch. So let's see. So here's the one command that just queries for one machine, and the results are pumped up to Elasticsearch. So I've created a SEP devices index in Elasticsearch, and this is a built-in way to retrieve the data from SEP14, and here we're actually going to post it to Elasticsearch. And so I first had to create an index right there. So put index and the mapping, because if you don't have this, the date formats are considered, I believe it was integers or floats, I forget right now. But if you specify these, then you'll get the proper date stamps. So this creates a SEP devices index with the proper mapping, and this one just transfers one at a time. But if you want to do all of them, here's the bare computers command with a post execution that grabs all of the devices, loops them, converts them to the Elasticsearch bulk upload format, which is requires this at the top of the file, and then one line per JSON object, and then uploads it. So that should be operational. Yep, there you go. So that just uploaded to Elasticsearch. And if let me see over here, let's load this up. And if we go to this guy now, whoops, wrong screen. If we go to Kibana, actually let's go here. You can see if we choose SEP devices, and let's say yeah, there we go. So our devices are in there now, so we can start visualizing information. So host name by IP, and this is all due to the use of Postman and Elasticsearch in the back end. If that's of interest, I can do a follow-up video on using Elasticsearch and Kibana. But I think if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them. Otherwise, we're gonna end a little early. Are there any questions in the chat? All right. So I appreciate everyone attending the session. I will first close caption the video, do a few edits, especially for the evidence of compromise, and then post the SEP14 REST API collection on GitHub, and I'll put that link at the end of the video. So I appreciate everybody attending the session. So all right, so I'll start working on the next Casual Friday. I'll do a Elasticsearch Kibana casual demo. Awesome. All right, if there are no other questions, guys, then we're done for the day. Thank you very much. This is my first video presentation. Please leave your comments. If you liked it, please like it a lot. Tell other folks that are interested in REST APIs, and have a great day.